All right. So each authorized user will have a unique login and password and be responsible for all transactions under their care. We do not share login and passwords. That will be grounds for immediate removal from the system and sanctions by the society. So it's very easy to assign a person a unique user account. There's no excuse for having to share an account. That should never happen, and it will be dealt with strictly. So never share information. If they want to use a credit card, they do not need a PayPal account. So they only need a credit card. And again, to be approved to use any Kingdom electronic payment system, such as SCARS or PayPal, all groups must remain current on all reporting. So you must be quarterly reporting, NMR reporting, everything must be in current status, and your group must be in good standing with the Kingdom. So if there are any problems, I do compare notes with the society or with the Kingdom Seneschal. Your group must be in good standing. Your group must have a warranted Exchequer to use PayPal, even though authorized users will be individually warranted to use the system. Your group must have a warranted Exchequer because the reporting ultimately goes through them to Kingdom. So to be an authorized user, you must be a member of the SCA. You must be at least 18 years old. You must be warranted. And you can be warranted either through your branch, your group, or the Kingdom. You can be a Kingdom deputy, but you must be warranted at some level. Copies of your proof of membership and a photo ID have to remain on file to be warranted. So training for Exchequers, how to record event income on the quarterly financial report, and how to request PayPal setup for your event from the Kingdom PayPal deputy. So that's training for the group Exchequer. Training for authorized users will include the proper way to calculate and manage the credit card processing fee, instructions on how to use the hardware, so your smartphone or tablet with the card reader, and how to complete the event transaction reports. So your personal transaction reports, and then compiled with the branch financial reports and how that's all done. And again, each branch determines their own refund policy, but you must have a refund policy published. Your policy can be no refunds allowed, but that has to be published. That's a bit harsh. I don't recommend that, but you could do it. And again, we have the options to consider for your refund policy. So any questions about any of that so far? Tommaso, did I cover everything? Did I leave something out?
I think you hit all the points.
Okay.
When a group is ready to do this, you and I and the local Exchequer need to coordinate and get a training session together. So let us know when your group is ready.
Okay, to answer Caitlin's question, how about warranted Exchequers from other kingdoms? Absolutely, they must be warranted. I don't care where. An SCA warrant is an SCA warrant. So as long as you have you can prove to me you're warranted, I'm good. Okay. I will make regular announcements about going forward with the PayPal and SCARS information. They'll appear on Facebook. I will continue to send announcements out via email for everyone. That seems to be working fairly well. Keep your eyes open. We will be offering training for new volunteers who are interested in becoming Exchequers at Great Western War and in other locations as quickly as we can. Morgana has offered to help me with training new volunteers. Please, please encourage anyone you think might be interested. We are desperate for volunteers. I have several special projects at kingdom level. I would love to find volunteers to help me. They would become a deputy and learn. Everyone's welcome. Please, please send them our way. Okay, let's take a bio break. The last topic that I have is instructions on how to complete the financial report form. And that is sort of a long and grueling topic. If you're not responsible for filling out the report form, it can be very dry. But if it's been several years since you've had instructions on how to fill out the report form, I recommend you stick around. And I'll get through it as quickly as I can, but it's pretty long. So I'd like to take a 10-minute bio break. Actually, it's 11:30. Do we want to do, say, a half an hour or an hour break, grab some lunch and come back? Or do we want to just take a quick bio break and dive in? Can I get some input? Who's up for a half an hour lunch break? Thumbs up. Yeah, that looks pretty good. All right, let's do that. 30 minutes.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording so we don't have 30 minutes of blank.
Of dead air. I appreciate that. Thanks. So here we go. We're going to take a look at the report form. We're going to review how to complete it, take a look at what's new. So I am going to share my screen. And something to keep in mind when you're working with the Excel spreadsheet. Number one, if you can, use the most recent version of Excel that you can. Older or free versions of Excel just cause us all kinds of headaches and problems. And you shouldn't have to, as a branch Exchequer, you just shouldn't have to work that hard. It's not fair to you. Surely someone can provide a copy of Excel so that you can function. Most people get some kind of a security warning at the top. Always make sure that you enable the content or approve changes or whatever the security warnings ask for. Otherwise, none of the information that you input into the report form is going to stick. You may fill out the whole report form and try to save it, and it just shuts off and nothing stayed. So be sure to check for security warnings, enable macros, make it a trusted document, whatever your version of Excel and Windows needs, be sure you do all those things. So per SCA financial policy, we enjoy tax exempt status in the USA and Canada. Maintaining that status requires that we adopt certain uniform practices and standards regarding our financial activity. And part of those practices and standards includes reporting. The SCA does employ financial auditors to watch our books and make recommendations and run the numbers to help us with filing at the end of each year. So this Excel document that we're looking at right now, I'm assuming that most of you have a basic understanding of accounting terms and methods, and a basic working knowledge of Excel. That's really all you need to get this report created. But I also understand that sometimes a group has to take the volunteer willing to try to do the job. So if you feel like some of your skills aren't quite up to muster, or if you're not understanding something that we're talking about, please slow me down. And there are no stupid questions. People that work with financial information a lot forget that not everyone knows all of the terms, and that's not really fair. But I try to remember to break things down to a user level, but I'm not perfect either. So bear with me and slow me down if you need it. So this is the standard form that the SCA requires that we file all of our information on. Now, there's a couple of ways that we can complete this form. We can use this Excel spreadsheet, and it includes macros, which are formulas built into the background that do a lot of the math for us and fill in some of the blanks for us, which is really great as long as you understand what's going on there in the background. But you don't have to use this Excel version. You are able to simply print it as a PDF document and with a pencil fill in the blanks. Now that means you've got to do all the math on your calculator on a scratch paper. You've got to track some information. You've got to know where to retrieve the information. And there are clues all through the document to help you figure out where to get that. But if you can use the standard Excel document, do it electronically and submit it electronically, I am ever in your debt, because I have to have it in this form in the end to submit my reports going forward. So I really appreciate your help there. So we complete this report quarterly, and it continues. So it continues for a full year. So at the end of first quarter, we just roll into second quarter and keep going. And at the end of the year, we submit the report as complete. So quarterly, I hope you track it, make sure that your numbers are looking good and we're getting where we need to be. We've got the information we need. And then by the end of the year, we should be good to go. We should have a handle on what you're doing and be able to submit the completed report. A new report will be started each year. So you will submit your year-end totals. The auditors will digest those. They will get back to me and tell me yes or no, those look good, or here's some tweaks we need you to make. And then we drop the new numbers in for the beginning of the next year, and we're off and running. So never ever change your starting numbers unless you're told to. If I don't get in touch with you, just keep going, you're looking good. If there's a change is needed, I will send you new starting numbers. If they are different from what you submitted last year, it's no indication on your abilities. It could be something as rule changes at the upper levels. So don't let it bother you. Just keep doing what you're doing. Okay, so we touched on the simple PDF version of this report. We're looking at the Excel macro-enabled spreadsheet or workbook document. If we scroll down here on this contents page, we're looking at the contents tab. You can see that at the bottom. And if we scroll all the way down, we can see the version and the size and the locked feature. So the version is version 6. This is what we'll be moving to by the end of 2021. The size simply describes how many tabs there are. So for very, very large groups like Great Western War, the Barony of Calafia, the Kingdom Report, we need several duplicate copies of each tab. So this report includes, you can see right here, duplicates of each type of transaction. The small document will have only one copy of that tab. That's the only difference when we're talking size. How many tabs are offered for you to fill in your information? When it says locked, it means that the formulas or macros that this document uses are locked and protected. So you can't accidentally delete them and make a mistake, submit a report that's broken. So locked means Kimmy, stop laughing. Locked means the formulas are there and protected. Do not use an unlocked document unless you really know what you're doing. Leave it locked. Okay, so now please notice that the extension on this document is XLSM, and that denotes a macro-enabled workbook. It is not XLS, which is a standard Excel spreadsheet. There is a difference. This one has embedded macros. That's what we want. We have to approve those. Most systems by default do not allow macros because you can get viruses that way. So when you're working with this workbook, you have to allow macros. That's mathematical functions that run in the background. When you save this document, be sure you save it as an XLSM so that the macros stay intact and they function when I receive it. All right. Okay. So real quick, our report style is cumulative. We accumulate transactions and entries for the year. At the end of the year, we close our books. So we are cumulative. We function in US dollars. The SCA includes many foreign countries. So there are report forms available for those other countries in other than US dollars. And Caid is a part of the original corporation. So we are corporate. This is usually not selectable. In this report form, if a field is highlighted in blue, that means you can make an entry there. You can change what appears there, or you can make an entry there. If it's white, that's locked. It's set. You cannot change it. So when you're downloading your copy of the report form from the Society's website, make sure that you're choosing the correct form. Don't choose one that in the title includes ex-US. That's for other than US dollars. And make sure that you do not choose one that says SUB for subsidiary. We are not a subsidiary. We are a part of the corporation. Okay, so we know by looking here, we've got the right version, we've got the right size for our branch, we're using it locked. Those are all important things. We're using it as an XLSM file type, which means our entries will stick, the formulas will work, as long as we save it in the same format. We also know that we're using a cumulative report in US dollars for the corporation. Does that make sense for everybody so far? Okay, this stuff is important. If you use the wrong report form, I have to kick it back to you. So be sure you pay attention. All of this data must be completed. It's important. The data you enter here populates to other tabs in the report form. It will move it forward. So make sure the data you enter here is accurate. Not what you want it to say, but what it actually is. So all of this is important. Make sure you read all of these little notes. They're very helpful. I don't trust these little buttons very much. They're buggy and glitchy. There are a few that I can make them submit to my desires, but most of them are glitchy. So be careful when you're using these buttons at the bottom. Always save a backup copy before you click a button, because some of these will change your report. So back up often. And the saying goes, as often as you don't want to re-enter the data. Okay, so that is the opening tab of the report form. When you're putting together your report form, if you're having trouble understanding what it's doing, it might be helpful to start at the end, at the last tab, and work your way forward. Most of the data is entered at the back of the report, and it will populate forward. And we'll take a look at that in a minute. You'll get a better idea of what I'm talking about. So these front tabs are the results of all your data entry, and all the data comes later. So if you're using the small form, that means that your branch probably does not own any regalia. You do not host very many events. You don't own any depreciated equipment. It's a pretty simple document. It includes very few of all of these tabs. All of these blue titles are clickable links. So I can click here and it will take me to that tab, which is a nice quick way to get around in the document once you're entering data. Also, once you're done with your report, if you have done it correctly, much of this text will turn green, meaning that your tab is in balance, your report is balanced. If it turns red, you know to go and take another look. Something isn't quite right and it's not balancing. So this is meant to give you a quick visual indication of whether your report is accurate or not. So the medium-sized report is the most commonly used report size. It includes at least one of all of these tabs, which is usually plenty of room to make all of your entries. It includes the regalia, the depreciation, and all those necessary things for most groups. So medium is the most commonly used. The large version is really for kingdom, for large wars, large baronies that have many subgroups. Those are the branches that use the large form. You know who you are. And they take a little bit more time to digest and balance. So if you don't need the large form, don't go there. All branches are expected to submit a copy of their general ledger, or check register is another name for the same thing. And that is required for each quarterly report. So your register needs to be included. Where you include it is your business. But I highly recommend the very last tab in the report is called the free form. It's simply a blank spreadsheet. You can do whatever you want on that blank spreadsheet. It's a good place to keep track of your financial committee votes. It's a good place to keep your check register, whatever you want. And it's not limited to just one sheet. You can add sheets to this report form, whatever you need. It will not affect the rest of the report, anything you add at the end. So this is the standard report. Several groups in Caid have a built-in ledger on the freeform page, on the freeform tab. If you're already using it, you get it. It's a great tool, and it helps you get some of the work done for the report. It's a great way to make sure you're not making mistakes. If you're interested in learning more about it, let me know. I'm happy to teach it. It does take a few more lessons. It's a little bit more to learn, but in the long run, it helps you omit errors. So, Serena, go ahead.
Will that be included in the 6 in the page?
Yes, I'm making with general ledger and without general ledger available on Teams, and but if you go to Society, they do not use it. So
Okay.
the only place you can get it is here in Caid.
Okay,
So
thank you.
but yeah, it's up there. We do have to rework the large report form. It just got some corrections. So again, don't start using this new version 6 until you're told it's okay. So bear with us there. But everything else about this is the same. Oh, and if you have more than one bank account, so you can have a savings and a checking, you can have a money market, you can have a CD. If you want to keep those registers on the freeform page, that's great. Just use it as you want to. Okay, the built-in ledger, it helps double check your entries and locate errors much quicker. So going forward with these instructions, I'm going to assume you're using this Excel workbook with macros. If you're using the PDF, you'll get some good information, but I'm going to assume you're using Excel. So if you have questions, stop me and we'll talk about it. So again, you might have to enable content, you might have to enable editing, you might have to allow or enable macros. It all depends on what version of Windows you're using and what version of Excel you're using. And you may have to make it a trusted document every time you open it. So just be aware. I am going to move ahead to the contact info tab. If you're uncertain of your warrant date, you can ask me or you can ask Algetha. We both keep track of your warrant. You should have an individual warrant, plus you should appear on a roster. If you don't have a copy of your warrant and want one, let me know. We'll get one for you. And your warrants are good for 2 years. This information is mandatory. Without this, your report is incomplete. So be sure to fill this all in for me. Membership numbers, if they're past due, expired, your report will be rejected. So make sure that's kept up to date. Many of the fields on the report form, of course, I pick a page that really doesn't have any. Oh, come on. they will have a small drop down where information is required. Here we go. So you'll see this little tiny arrow pop up off to the left of the field. You have to really keep your eyes open for these little guys. They're easy to miss. But if you're offered a drop-down selection, it's always wise to use it and instead of typing in your option. And this helps the macros understand better and kick in. So if you're ever offered a drop-down, use the drop-down to select your data. I'm going to send out these instructions. I'll make them available on Teams. And every time there's a drop-down option in the notes, in the instructions, it appears in red text. So you'll remember to choose the drop-down option there. Always read the small text. It will help you a great deal, and it will save you and I going back and forth many times asking questions when it's actually already provided in the little box. So very carefully read all the little details. You may need to scroll down or you may need to scroll to the right to see all of the options on a tab. They may not all fit on your screen. So if something doesn't seem to be making sense, kind of, reduce your screen size so that you can see more of what's going on off of your screen. Be sure to scroll down all the way. Sometimes they don't fit real well on your display. The information is there, you just may not be able to see it. So, and do remember that this will ultimately, this information, this report will go to the IRS auditors. So we need to make sure that the information here is correct, especially things like when people were added to the signature card. There's a space here that says, tell us when the signature card was changed. And that really is important. And what that does is, in case of audit, it will tell them who had access to the account on the day the transaction happened. This will protect people that don't need to be investigated. They were long gone and off the signature card, or were newly added. They didn't have access until February. All this little data is important. So please do fill in the blanks to the best you can, as accurately as you can. If someone should be on the signature card but isn't, don't fib, don't put what you want to be true. Put what is true. And if you don't know, contact your bank and find out who is on the signature card. When were they added? So that we can protect everyone. Oh, yes, the other thing, when you're adding data, remember that the people who will ultimately be looking at your report, they're not SCA people. So they may not understand Seneschal. They may not understand anniversary event. So try to think like a banker and add data that they can understand. Check numbers really are important information. When you're entering a check, the date is always the date written on the check, not the date you received it or deposited it, the date written on the check. So tab 1, as we discussed briefly, this is your contact information. Corporate does access this. They do check it. They make sure we're members. They make sure everything is up and up. So tabs 1 through tab 4 are official report documents for your branch. Tab 5 through tab 12, this is where you record the branch's money, where it's spent, who you owe, where your money is earned, who you owe it to. This is the meat and potatoes. And the point of this report form is any of us can drop off the face of the earth at any given moment. You may have been at the council meeting and you remember that that last check you wrote was for insurance to the SCA for the park. Not everyone will remember that. And if something happens to you, someone's got to pick up those books and continue working. And if it's me and you haven't kept good records, I'm going to be cranky. So do everyone a favor and keep good records. If you put the data in, I'll be able to look at this and say, oh yeah, I wrote a check for insurance. Okay, problem solved, mystery solved, we can move forward. If you wait and do it right before it's due, that could leave me 2 months behind, and I've got to guess the expense or who got the check and did it get cashed. And so please, it helps you remember what's going on. It helps anyone who has to step in. It is required as part of your job to keep this accurate. So if you've done all the entries correctly, I can just pick it up and go. It's much easier. So the contents page is important data. Name of the branch is the entire name, no nicknames. So if you're a canton, please post that. If you're a shire, please include that. That's how we track down everything. So more information is better. Don't shortcut for us. Legal names here only. This is a legal financial document. So legal names go on legal documents. So Seneschal's name, Exchequer's name, Royals, Baron and Baroness, all those names need to be legal names. In the year, modern digits only, please. AS doesn't count to an auditor. So modern digits, please. We choose the quarter. So we're working on first quarter. We use the little drop down arrow, make sure that's always updated. By updating that, it enables certain macros. Depreciation isn't calculated until the fourth quarter of the year. It doesn't calculate until you hit 4. So make sure that the quarter is advanced each quarter so that everything calculates properly. Alrighty, reminder, Caid is not a subsidiary, and that matters. In transfers and other topics, we are not a subsidiary. Okay, we talked about contacts. Deputies 4, lots of information, please. We used to call them drop dead. That doesn't mean anything to an auditor. So now it's a contingency deputy. Drop dead makes no sense unless you're part of the SCA. Contingency. And you can have special purpose, NMR. You can have special purpose report filing. Whatever arrangements you've made. More information is better. Deputies must be warranted if they're handling the report. Remember that. Trainees don't necessarily need to be warranted right away. Your contingency must be warranted. So make sure that they keep that up. You could have a regalia deputy, a gate deputy, who knows? There can be all kinds of things. Your primary account tab. This is your check register. You're tracking your account. This is your main account. This must balance at the end of each quarter. Should balance at the end of every month. When you're checking your bank statements, you should be reconciling your bank statements against this page, this tab on your report form, and they should balance monthly. If you're struggling and you need a little more time to complete your reports, contact me. I'm happy to help. I spend a lot of time working on these. Happy to help you. If you would like help from someone else who's a warranted Exchequer, I'm fine with that. If you'd rather work with Algetha or Morgana, feel free to contact them. We're happy to help you. If you need more time, you need to ask me. You need to contact me and let me know what's going on. I will type up a little variance form and throw it in your folder so we both remember that you have permission to be a week late or 2 weeks late. But don't just be a mystery and not tell me anything. So the information at the top, then bank name. This needs to be the name of the bank that appears on your bank statement, which isn't B of A, it's Bank of America. Some of the credit unions and smaller banks, their names can be kind of convoluted. So I really do need the entire name of your bank. It's very helpful to know, you know, Wells Fargo branch, Ridgecrest, whatever. It's helpful. Bank account title, it's usually money market checking or standard checking, business checking, whatever. It's usually listed on your bank statement as well. A contact at your bank. This has been remarkably helpful. I know you can just give me the 800 number, which is better than nothing, and I don't have to go digging for your bank statements. I can just look here and I've got it. But boy, having the name of someone at the branch I can speak to and a quick number I can call them, they already know who we're talking about when I say goofy things like Canton of Flappy Jack. They're not quite as startled by that kind of stuff. It really is helpful. So please do me a favor, fill in, you know, that person you've already acquainted with the weirdness of the SCA. Bank's signature requirement. Now, the SCA requires dual signatures on all checks. We all know that. We have to have dual signatures. The bank may or may not require that. And frankly, they usually don't require 2 signatures. They don't have a way to require us to get 2 signatures. So normally you would answer, you would choose in the little drop down here, single signature, because most accounts are that way. We know the SCA requires dual signature. What does the bank require? The bank also requires dual signature. That's important for us to know, but that's very uncommon. So make sure you choose the right drop down. Be sure to give me your complete bank account number, not just the last 4 digits. I do have copies of your bank statements. We can go and dig that up, but please do include the entire bank account number on your reports. Okay, and the statement ending date. Of course, that's important. It's a reminder that you chose the right bank statement to balance or reconcile this page against. And again, the bank account signatories, when this changed, if you don't know, go to your last report and pick up that information from your last report. Chances are it hasn't changed. If you don't know for sure, it probably has not changed. So go to your last official report and fill that information in here. Okay, we're going to move into the secondary accounts. Now this, of course, is for CDs, money market accounts, savings accounts, all of those kinds of accounts will be recorded on the secondary accounts reconciliation form. This is all pretty self-explanatory. You can see most of the information is blue. It's for you to fill in the data. White fields are not fillable. It's usually just for information, or it's a sum of a formula that's happening elsewhere. So be sure to fill in all of the information that you can as accurately as you possibly can. If you're struggling to make this balance, let me know. If you have closed a CD or an account during that quarter, this tab can get a little fishy, a little dicey. Give me a call. I'll help you get this completed and we'll make everything balance. So, but this is for anything that is not your main checking account. That's what goes on this page. Watch for the drop downs. Make sure you know whether this is an interest-bearing account. That's important data. Most of the accounts that you enter on this page will be interest-bearing. Again, it should be self-explanatory. If you run into a problem, let me know. All right, moving on to our balance sheet. This is the comparative balance sheet tab. This is public information. This should be published somewhere to your membership, at least yearly. If anybody asks to see it, we share this. So once it's complete, you can publish it in your local newsletter, you can publish it wherever you choose. But it should be shared. This is not, we're not hiding anything. Note that there are very few cells on this tab that are editable. So these are your starting numbers. At January 1st, the ending numbers from last year will be entered here as your starting numbers for the upcoming year. This is what you do not change unless you've been told to. Of course, this year we're going to have lots of changes. You'll wait to hear from me. I will give you the information that goes in these lines and we'll work forward from there. All of the rest of these fields will calculate based on the data you enter on the tabs at the end of the report that we haven't gotten to yet. We enter the data there, it will calculate the totals, and it will update these figures here, these cells. So these will change as we enter more data at the end of the report. So we have nothing to enter here now. But if we had started at the back, we would start seeing numbers popping in here. So this is what all of the data, all of the checks you've written, all of the invoices you've received, all of the property you've tracked and entered all the data about it. This is where it all gets compiled. This is your final numbers, and this is what we can share with the branch, with the group, anybody who wants to see it. Our net worth. And this is a page that must be signed by the Exchequer and the Seneschal. And they're promising that this data is correct. So this is one of the pages that is submitted with your final report, your quarterly report and your year-end report. And this page must balance or your report is not accepted. If you don't balance and you can't figure it out, contact me. I'll stay on there with you until we get it done. But if you just send it to me and expect me to accept it, I can't. So this page must balance for you to qualify for SCARS or PayPal or whatever. All right, moving on to income. This is another tab. This information is public. You may share it with anyone who's interested. I would make sure that it is approved first before you share it, but you can. So again, most of the fields on this are not editable. The information comes from data that's entered later in the report. Okay, I have a note here about income. If you'll notice in the old report, it said something about raffles in here that has been removed. Everyone remembers that raffles are not an approved fundraising activity. Okay, so that has been removed as a reminder. Online auctions are also disapproved. Live auctions are okay. Online auctions are not approved. So down here where we talk about in expenses, office and administration, that's for tracking and reporting what we do, the stuff that we need to do to make the SCA work. So when the Exchequer needs envelopes or postage, it goes under office and administration. Activity related is events, classes, courts, awards, anything that contributes to what we do and improves on what we do. And then there's fundraising, raising money for what we do. And that can be what it costs us to fundraise or what we have earned by fundraising. So got to keep those two in your mind. And then other expenses, there should be nothing in this line. If you feel like it's the only place that you have that fits your situation, contact me and we'll try and figure it out. It may actually go here, but that's very, very rare. We have separate lines for donations and then the nightmare transfers. So just keep in mind, I see you laughing, Sharon. Transfers are just the bane of my existence, I tell you. This is another tab that must be signed and is submitted as part of your quarterly reports. All right, moving on. Asset detail. Now we're getting into the meat of the report form. And this is to help you track what's going on currently with your group. So keeping good records and notes on this page will help you remember exactly where you are in the process of collecting and reconciling transactions, undeposited funds, and late arriving transfer checks. So this is where your cash box money should be listed. So there should appear an amount there. We left $25 in the cash box. Anything that we own but isn't in the bank. So if I received a transfer check on the last day of the quarter, my report is completely done, except I have just received this transfer check. I can list it here. listed in my check register, of course, and listed here. It's not in the bank yet, but I have it. But it can't stay here. And there shouldn't really be anything listed here. You should be able to hold that transfer check for a day or get it into the bank and add it into your report properly. But there is a place for outstanding things. But nothing after December 10th better appear here. I'm going to be very cranky. So receivables. Entries in this block are always entered as positive numbers. The same entries are debits or withdrawals in your general ledger. Examples might be in advance. When a branch gives a person a check to make a purchase on behalf of the group, the check, of course, is entered into your general ledger as normal, but it's not expensed. The amount is entered on tab 5A, receivables, manually, and is entered in the current amount column. So if this month I advanced money to the Kingdom for Zoom subscription, this is where I would enter that. If it was an expense that rolled over, a receivable that rolled over from last year, it would appear in the prior amount. So I would have to reconcile this to get it off of here. But I leave the notes. So as the Kingdom Exchequer, if I see an entry here, I'm going to know, okay, we wrote a check for a Zoom subscription. We advanced the money, and there it is. If there's no amount here, if both are zero, okay, it's reconciled. I don't have to worry about it. But that's what happened to the money. It was an advance, it got returned. It's all good because there's no money currently appearing. Current amount would be zero if we had reconciled the receivable. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, so if there was a Zoom subscription advance listed here and there was a current amount, I would know we have not received the receipts for that. We have not reconciled that advance. It's still outstanding. We've got to finish that up. We've got to complete it. Okay, so that helps me track. Have I gotten the receipts back? Have I reconciled this advance? What's going on? Oh, there it is. No, I haven't finished. Return check. So if we have a bounce check from someone at an event, that would also be listed here. If we have not recovered the amount from the bad check writer, it would still appear here until we get it resolved. So the bank returns a check to you and you think that you may be able to find the check writer and collect the fee, you would enter it here. Of course, it's entered in your general ledger. No memo is needed in the general ledger. It sits in receivables. Bank fees, if your bank charged you a fee for the bounce check and you believe that you can recover the fees, they are entered here. Be sure to enter the person's full modern name, the bad check writer, that is. The check number, the date, include all identifying information that you can and any event name or reason that the check was returned. If you know, tell us as much as you know. Use lots of lines. I don't, we'll make it work. If you have to hand your books off, the person taking over may not know the situation, may not know of anything you've negotiated with a bad check writer. If you have spoken to them, note that. If you can't find them, note that. It's important. When it comes time to reconcile these entries, if the person who got the advance comes back with the receipts and the remaining funds, if there was any remaining funds, you make all your entries, you remove them here, but you leave the notes. They are helpful. That way everyone knows, oh, Susie Q returned the money. She's good. We can all trust Susie Q. And of course, at the end of the year, that stays there, but when we roll over, all those notes go away. Okay. If you have a bounce check and you don't think you're going to get the funds back, you're pretty certain you're never going to find that person. You'll need a vote from your financial committee to give up the search. So you'll need to do your due diligence, try to get that money back, try to track that person down, do the best you can. But if it becomes apparent that you're not going to get the money back, your finance committee will need to agree, we've done everything we can, it's time to move on. It's now a bad debt. We'll move it to another place on the report and move on. If they eventually do resurface and you get your money back, there is a way to get that money back into the system. But for now, if you feel like you've done what you can, we move it to a bad debt. That's on tab 12A. We'll see that in a few minutes. Alrighty, moving on to prepaid expenses. You use these blocks the same way you used the receivables block. Prior amounts are from the previous year. Current amounts, of course, are currently active transactions. Make all the clear notes you can. More information is always good. Examples of prepaid expenses are site deposits, down payments for services, like you're going to get the porta potties pumped and you pay in advance for that, but they haven't provided the service yet. That's a prepaid expense until they do the work. You're renting tables and chairs for an event in the future, but they needed a deposit or you paid for it in advance. Those are all prepaid expenses that would go here. And when they're reconciled, that's when you use the service or that's when you use the agreement. It's pretty straightforward. Other assets. Not many entries go here. Use this block sparingly. Site security deposits can be entered here, but should not be allowed to linger. There is an exception. If you use a site reoccurringly, it's just one that your group always uses. For instance, if you pay a security deposit for your monthly business meeting site, and you just kind of leave it on deposit with them, that amount can go under other assets. We own the money, but they're using it right now. So that's what this kind of is for. So you could enter, yeah, we've got $75 for the Park and Rec department because we always use their meeting room and they just keep it and we roll it over and roll it over. Okay, that can stay here. So that would be a current amount until the end of the year, and then it may roll over into the next year and it becomes a prior amount and a current amount, and we reconcile it back and forth. So that is an exception. Those kind of expenses can remain here. Otherwise, if it seems the only logical place for your transaction, contact me because it probably doesn't belong here. It probably belongs someplace else.